Hey everyone, we're at Computex 2018 at the SilverStone booth now. A couple of updates from CES cases we saw from SilverStone, also a couple of new ones. So the main one to talk about is probably the LD03, which is basically a showroom ITX style case. This is the frame of another case we're going to be talking about, the SG14, except on its face. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly's high-end thermal paste and liquid metal. Thermal Grizzly's Cryonaut is an affordable, high-quality thermal compound that doesn't face some of the aging limitations of other pastes on the market. Cryonaut has a thermal conductivity of 12.5 watts per meter Kelvin, focuses on endurance, is easy to spread, and isn't electrically conductive, making it safe to use on GPU dies. Thermal Grizzly also makes Conductonaut liquid metal, which we've used to drop 20 degrees off some temperatures in our delidded tests. Buy a tube at the link in the description below. So, the LD03, basically it's the new SG14. They showed SG14s years ago. It's been revised completely, power supply's been moved around. This is an LD03 that uses the SG14 chassis and tooling, again, just inverted. So, inverted motherboard layout, rotated motherboard layout. The video card over here is up against the glass on the side. We'll talk about that in a moment. The bottom intake here is suitable for a 120mm fan. There's also a 120mm fan option at the top. There's an 80mm fan exhaust option over here. SilverStone is still kind of in the design development phases, so if you have thoughts on this case, let them know below because you actually have an opportunity to impact it. One of the things they're debating is whether or not to include 120 fans or just let the users buy it. Because, as always, they can include them. It'll cost a lot more, clearly, to do that. Or leave it stock. You pay less, but then you provide your own fans. So anyway, 120mm option at the bottom. All of the intakes coming in through sort of the back here where there's no plastic or anything on the side. This side has a bit of glass and some grill on the side, a bit of a grill on this front. And other than that, the exhaust is entirely out the top where there's a mesh, and there's some exhaust on the back where the power supply goes. Power supply mounts back this way. There are SSD sleds on this side of the chassis facing out. Like I said, it's a showroom case, so everything that could look good is exposed outwards. The CPU sort of down center as you'd expect. Video card is the only thing I'm personally concerned about. I really like the case design. Visually it looks cool. It's very interesting. They've rotated a Mini-ITX case, and Mini-ITX is kind of in right now. So I really like where the design's going. Thermals for the GPU, my only point of concern. I think it can be addressed though. I think it can be made to work, especially if maybe, I don't know how much room there is to play with the bottom fan, but shift it over, it should be pretty good. Anyway, that's the LD03. Pricing, I'm curious what you think it'll cost. I guess leave a comment on what you think that'll be, but if you unpause the video now, should be somewhere towards $100 depending on those 120mm fan inclusions and also what happens with the 80mm fan. So that's the LD03. Pretty interesting, but let's take it over to the other new cases from SilverStone's booth, including the CS381, which is more of like a mini server size chassis we talked about at CES, and then also a PS15, tentatively TJ08, and a couple of other items over in the rest of the booth. CS381 over here is personally interesting. This can fit 10 hard drives in it in the front center area, and they've updated this front panel, so now it's got a bit more mesh on the front for the paneling, but you can see it's actually more or less hot swap setup for the 10 drives. If you wanted to, you could do another 2 hard drives, 3.5 inch on the side. Currently, it's set up for fans, so it's either you get more fans, more airflow, or more drives, and they actually have a really old card as an Easter egg in there. It might almost be ATI era card. But if you wanted to do a Micro-ATX, basically mini server build, which we're considering for a NAS replacement, it's a pretty good form factor for it. You can fit a high-end machine in there. So my thoughts on a use case for this are basically small compression server. So you put something like Micro-ATX Threadripper or i9, whatever series CPUs, you can let it do video compression and stuff like that while also storing a ton of video on it. Airflow should be pretty good actually, especially if you forego the 2 3.5 options on the side and just go with 120s. But worst case, you throw in some 120s and or some extra hard drives if you need 12 of them. So that's a CS381. Not 100% clear on release date for it yet, but it's been updated a bit from CES. Looks pretty good. This is the SG14 I was talking about. So this is the one that the LD03 we started in front of is based off of. Super lightweight chassis. It's got a pass-through for demonstrating the lightness here, a pass-through for the power on the back, and that just plugs into the power supply. SilverStone's done that a few times before. So that's a Mini-ITX case. It looks pretty good. It's actually this one I'm interested in as well. So this one here is a PS15. It's a Micro-ATX case. if you remember the Vulcan, I want to say that was an NZXT case. A lot of people really wanted to follow up to the Vulcan, and it never came. Not from NZXT anyway. So this is a Micro-ATX setup with a full mesh front. It's supposed to be pretty budget targeted, so anywhere $30 to $50. Let's just call that the range. I don't know that it'll include fans, but you can pick them up cheap enough. So yeah, Micro-ATX, SilverStone basically with their smaller form factor cases tries to stay truer to the form factor of the motherboard and not just make it a gigantic box with smaller motherboard support and call it an ITX or Micro-ATX case. This is genuinely Micro-ATX and suitable for the size. So I really like that one presently. We'll have to see how it does in reviews, obviously, before recommending a purchase, but in terms of airflow and mesh, I can tell by looking at it that it's going to be better than a lot of the ones on the market. It's just a matter of what fans do you put in it, because it'll probably come with none. So as far as cases for a trade show, looks pretty good for that one. These two are based off of some of the chassis that I was standing in front of a moment ago over there. This is a TJ08 tentative name, TJ08 Pro, and the PS07. More or less the same tooling, just the difference is the front panel is solid on one of them, and then you can push this thing down if you want a 5 1/4 bay. I know a couple of you have wanted them. A couple of you really hate 5 1/4 bays, but I guess it's an option if you want it. So that's the cases for SilverStone. Let us know which ones you're interested in, and we'll try and get them for review in the future. As always, thank you for watching. Go to patreon.com/GamersNexus. It helps out directly. Go to store.gamersnexus.net if you want to buy our mod mat, and I'll see you all next time.